In Mexico, is set for Sunday's general elections. Over 100 million citizens are called to the polls. In Palestine, Israeli occupation troops continue their genocidal operations in Gaza. At least 95 people were killed in 5 Israeli massacres in the last 24 hours. And in India, polls close in the last stage of the 6-week marathon general elections. Exit polls show Prime Minister Narendra Modi's party will likely win a majority. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Mexico, 98 million citizens are called to the polls for Sunday's general elections. Voters ready for the first federal elections involving the 32 states. Mexicans will elect the president, 128 Senate seats, and 500 seats in the Chamber of Deputies. In this process, more than 20,000 local authorities will also be elected, including governorships, state legislative assemblies, municipal presidencies, and local councils. Mexico is getting ready for the next general elections. 98 million citizens are called to the vote on Sunday on the continuity of the project headed by President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Let's see a little more of the role he played in the region during the last 6 years in the following report by our correspondent, Isa Garcia.
Let's say goodbye to impositions, interference, sanctions, exclusions, and blockades.
These principles have characterized Mexico's relationship with Latin America since 2018, when President López Obrador came to office.
La no intervención y la autodeterminación de los pueblos.
Non-intervention and self-determination of the peoples.
Y la ayuda mutua.
The cooperation for development and mutual aid to combat inequality and discrimination.
The defense of Cuba and the call on the United States to lift the blockade have been always present.
Estamos en contra del bloqueo contra Cuba, porque ¿cómo?
We are against the blockade on Cuba.
Política ideológica.
Because why, as a result of a political ideological situation,
¿De quién tiene la razón?
Regardless of who is right, which I do believe Cuba is, because peoples have the right to be independent.
On the other hand, Cuba has appreciated Mexico's position.
Aprovecho también la ocasión para reconocer su respaldo al levantamiento.
I also take this opportunity to appreciate your support for the lifting of the illegal economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the United States against Cuba, which has been deliberately and opportunistically tightened under pandemic conditions, despite being condemned for decades by the overwhelming majority of the international community.
In relation to Venezuela and its coming elections, López Obrador has demanded to leave the Venezuelans to vote in peace.
Y sea el pueblo de Venezuela el que elija.
Let the Venezuelan people choose its authorities.
Mexico is also recognized as a key player in facilitating regional consensus building.
Throughout its history, Mexico has developed the capacity to be a guarantor at the peace talks between the government of the Republic of Colombia and the National Liberation Army. We have also participated in the dialogue and negotiation process between the government of Venezuela and the United Platform of Venezuela.
When the military coup took place in Bolivia, Mexico's stance placed the country in a global position.
What we are doing is applying the Mexican Constitution and granting asylum to Evo Morales. That's as far as Mexico's participation goes. Bolivia's internal affairs are up to the Bolivian people to decide.
Even when Mexico has certainly played a key role in many of the recent events in Latin America, it has also experienced complicated moments. Tensions still persist with the governments of Ecuador, Peru, and Argentina. There is no justification for the police forces to have broken into the Mexican embassy in Ecuador or to physically assault the dignity of the diplomatic personnel.
Afirmó que soy ignorante porque le llamé facho conservador.
Milei called me ignorant because I called him a conservative fascist. He's right. I still don't understand why Argentinians
votaron por alguien que
who are
no
so
está
intelligent
exacto,
voted for someone who is not accurate,
que desprecia al pueblo,
who despises the people, and who dared to accuse his fellow countryman Francis
de ser comunista
of being a communist
y representante del
and a
maligno.
representative of the devil on earth.
El presidente Castillo solicitó
President Castillo asked for asylum.
había la disposición de México de ofrecerlo, pero
Of course, Mexico was willing to give it to him,
previo a que pudiera llegar a los
but he was arrested before he could get to the embassy premises.
pudimos
However, we were able to provide protection and shelter to his family.
All these issues have been discussed frequently by the president during his morning conferences.
Y aunque los avances son notorios,
And although the achievements have been remarkable, the new president's agenda should include issues such as trade, migration, and cooperation, and above all migration, which is a very sensitive topic. And well, in this regard, significant steps have been taken.
Aiza García, TeleSUR, Ciudad de México.
Chile's indigenous community demands social improvements for the Mapuche people from Gabriel Boric's government. The indigenous representatives in parliament are demanding that the government provide access to drinking water, aid to family farming, and the strengthening of institutions that support the development of the communities. They also consider it a priority for the executive to speed up the handing over of land to the native peoples and an improvement in social justice. Indigenous Mapuche people who are deprived of their freedom are on hunger strike to demand respect for their rights established in the treaties ratified by the Chilean government. Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find Welcome back. At least 95 people were killed in Palestine as a result of 5 Israeli massacres in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. The Palestinian Ministry of Health announced that the Israeli aggressions against the Gaza Strip had left more than 350 wounded, although the total number of victims is unknown, since most of them are under rubble and on the roads. Authorities warned that Tel Aviv's attacks are preventing the entry of ambulances and medical teams. The Health Ministry detailed that since October 7, 2023, the Israeli aggression has left 36,379 Palestinians killed and 82,407 wounded. We stay in Palestine. The death toll from famine increased to 37 since October 7, 2023. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warned about the risk of deadly malnutrition and starvation among the most vulnerable civilians in Gaza. In this context, the entity pointed out that the Gazans do not have enough food to avoid famine. On the other hand, the Gaza Health Ministry reported that the number of people killed by the Israeli aggression increased to over 36,379 and 82,407 were wounded. The Islamic Resistance Movement of Lebanon, Hezbollah, attacked this Friday an Israeli military base as part of its support to the Palestinian people. According to the Lebanese authorities, Hezbollah attacked with suicide drones an Israeli army artillery unit, where they achieved the target's mark in the north of the Yiftah base. The resistance movement also launched heavy Burkan rockets to hit the headquarters of an Israeli army brigade in the town of Kiryat Shemune in the north of the occupied Palestinian territory. During the month of April, Hezbollah confirmed that it had eliminated nearly 2,000 Israeli soldiers in 1,650 operations since the beginning of Israel's genocidal war against the Gaza Strip. SANA pledged to intensify its operations in the Red Sea until Israel ends its genocidal operation in Gaza. In this regard, a U.S. congressional study revealed that the military offensive by Yemen has paralyzed the port of Eilat, Israel's economic artery in occupied Palestine. The Yemeni Popular Movement Ansarullah targets not only Zionist territory but also commercial maritime vessels as they attempt to reach the Red Sea and the port of Eilat, which caused the port's operations to be reduced to zero. Also in Yemen, residents mobilized in the capital city of Sana'a, making a massive demonstration in solidarity with the Palestinian people. Flags and banners filled the main streets of the capital, expressing the Yemeni people's support for the armed forces defending the Palestinian cause from the West aggressions. Demonstrators affirmed their backing to the displaced Palestinians and their just cause, stressing that the U.S. and British aggressions against Yemen will not break the will of Yemeni people and the leadership of their pro-Palestinian stance. In this context, different national authorities affirmed that their position remains firm, standing by the Palestinian people's right. In Germany, several cities in southwest of the country were affected by floods caused by heavy rainfall. According to the Meteorological Service, during the last 24 hours, more than 120 liters per square meter fell in several cities of the country. According to data provided by the institution, rainfall is expected to continue during this Saturday, and they warned that numerous streams and rivers in the southwest could reach their highest level in the last 50 or even 100 years. In view of the situation, the authorities call on the population living in and around the affected areas to evacuate their homes and go to the residences of relatives, friends, or places provided by the government for lodging. On the other hand, the evacuation of the population living in the affected areas continues. At least 300 people were evacuated from their homes and taken to temporary accommodation centers. Likewise, efforts are continuing to rescue people who were trapped in their homes by the floods and landslides. Weeks after its worst flood in history, the waters are beginning to subside in the southern Brazilian city of Porto Alegre, but a far-right social media disinformation campaign against relief efforts by the Lula administration continues. Here is our correspondent Vermeer with all the details.
Today marks a month since the start of the worst climate change disaster in the history of southern Brazil, when a freak rainstorm left dozens of towns underwater and caused the worst flood in Porto Alegre's history. And for the last month, far-right actors connected to the Bolsonaro family have been running disinformation campaigns to undermine the federal government's relief efforts.
Então, cada dia é uma fake news nova.
Every day there's new fake news. Now I've seen a campaign they are operating on WhatsApp, using the same techniques as the other disinformation campaigns, telling people to go to the supermarkets to buy everything they can before it disappears. They are clearly trying to create a food shortage. Everything is being done to damage the relief work.
Within hours after the start of the floods, the federal government sent national security forces and the military into the state to join the search and rescue efforts. And within days, there were 13,500 troops on the ground. Instead of rushing in to support the victims, far-right businessmen and politicians pushed a false counter-narrative on social media that federal forces hadn't arrived yet. This was only the start of their actions, which members of the Lula administration classify as sabotage.
President Lula lançou uma série de medidas.
President Lula has taken a series of measures so that Rio Grande do Sul can organize relief for the flood victims, but unfortunately it's all been distorted to create a smokescreen to relieve the culprits of guilt and redirect all of the anger and hatred. Unfortunately, Brazil has a tradition of political agents fostering and organizing hatred so that people have problems understanding what is true and what isn't.
The Justice Ministry has launched an investigation into illegal spreading of disinformation leading to harm of Brazilian citizens. Brian Mir, TeleSUR, Porto Alegre.
In Russia, fire departments managed to control a fire in the Tarasovsky district located in the Rostov region. According to the Ministry of Emergency, the surface of the fire extended to 169 hectares. Reports inform that the area is already under control. More than 200 people and 60 technical teams were involved in extinguishing the fires. We now have a final short break coming up. Before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected. Welcome back. In India, on Saturday, a summary of 6 exit polls indicates that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party-led alliance may win an emphatic majority in these general elections. The ruling right-wing National Democratic Alliance may win anywhere between 355 and 380 seats in the 543-member lower house of parliament, that is a two-third majority. Back in 2019, they won 353 seats, of which Modi's BJP party accounted for 303. Simple majority in the Indian parliament requires 272 seats. The opposition India alliance, led by Rahul Gandhi's Congress party, is projected to win over 120 seats, but they argue that in India exit polls are unscientific. Nearly 1 billion people were eligible to vote in the 7th-phase election began on April 19th despite a scorching summer heat. The Election Commission will count votes on June 4th and results are expected the same day.
Everybody should stay peacefully and there should be economic steady conditions in the country. That's what we are voting for. There is no growth is coming. The young generation is not getting the job, or they are not getting proper direction also. That's the reason we should go for a steady government.
In Beijing, the governments of China and Bahrain established bilateral strategic alliances and a meeting between President Xi Jinping and King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. During the gathering, issues of economic, commercial, and scientific interest were discussed, as well as current international and regional geopolitics. For his part, the monarch Al Khalifa highlighted Beijing's work to maintain peace and stability in the region, while Xi Jinping celebrated 35 years of China's ties with Bahrain and praised its ability to expand joint strategies to further their foreign relations to the highest level. Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko paid official visit to Mongolia to boost bilateral relations in trade areas. Lukashenko arrived at Genghis Khan International Airport on Saturday, where he was greeted by the presidential cabinet and Mongolian diplomatic delegates. The presidents of Belarus and Mongolia are expected to meet in the city of Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia, where they will take part in meetings and sign bilateral agreements. Lukashenko's visit is estimated to last until Tuesday, June 4th, and he is expected to discuss such issues as trade and economic cooperation with Mongolian high-ranking authorities. Russia's anti-aircraft defense system shot down Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles approaching the city of Belgorod. According to local authorities, the airstrike by the Ukrainian armed forces caused damage to the infrastructure of 4 residential houses. A fire was also reported in a private residential building, and a car was hit by a fragment of the destroyed drones, as well as the province of Belgorod is affected by constant incursions of sabotage groups from Ukraine in recent months and continuous attacks on border municipalities with the use of multiple rocket launchers, mortars, and drones. Russia and Ukraine announced Friday that they had exchanged dozens of prisoners of war in one of the only areas of dialogue between the belligerent countries. Despite large-scale hostilities, the two sides have conducted more than 50 prisoner exchanges since Russia launched a special denazification operation against Ukraine more than 2 years ago. The latest exchanges have been hampered by demands from both sides and following the breakdown in January of a Russian plane carrying Ukrainian prisoners to an exchange point. The Russian Defense Ministry said it had secured the release of 75 of its servicemen who it claimed were in mortal danger being held in Ukraine. Moscow also confirmed that it had returned 75 Ukrainian servicemen to Kiev and claimed that the United Arab Emirates had mediated the exchange as it had in previous swaps. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUREnglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.